The alarm didn't go off because there was no alarm to trigger. The system didn't blink. No lights. No alerts. No traces. Because when we entered the most secure digital vault ever built, codename Oblivion Gate, we didn't hack it. We logged in. My fingers hovered above the holographic interface, but my pulse was already racing. Around me, the core room of the abandoned Sky Harbor relay station flickered with ghost light from long-dead servers now pulsing back to life. Janus, our team's crawler, tilted his head at the blue cascade of symbols scrolling across his visor. "Are you sure this is the right line?" he asked me, voice a whisper inside our neural link. I didn't respond. Not yet. I was waiting. Then it came, the shift. A subtle change in the frequency, almost imperceptible, unless you've been trained in GC echo patterns like I had. Unless you'd lived in the latency field of Sector A8 for 5 years, listening for ghosts in code, studying how the Galactic Core hid their deepest secrets. I reached into my jacket and withdrew a data spike. Not a weapon. Not a decryptor. A key. "I'm not hacking it," I said. "Just logging into what's already mine." Janus frowned behind his visor. He always did when I spoke like that. When I said things that didn't make sense unless you believed in digital reincarnation or ancestral memory. But I knew the truth, even if I couldn't explain it in binary. Oblivion Gate recognized me. The gate's firewalls dissolved not with a bang, but with a sigh, a digital exhale. Layers of defense faded, onion skin thin, until the core interface pulsed emerald green and whispered, "Access granted." Janus staggered back. "That shouldn't be possible," he muttered. "That vault is a level Omega system, genetic locks, neural sync, quantum fog encryption." "Not anymore," I said. "Because inside the GC universe, the true inner grid of civilization, there were rules even the Galactic Core couldn't change. Old rules. Ghost code from the first coders. Whispers said they were more myth than fact, but I had found traces, logs buried in the ice layers of Titannet, deep inside ancient Martian hive backups. Traces of the 13th profile. It didn't exist in the current registry, wasn't listed in any of the 9 governing databases. But it was real. I knew, because that profile belonged to me. Before the collapse, before the merge, before even the formation of the Triad Treaty, there was a user, someone who had admin access to everything. And not a person in the literal sense. More like a consciousness seated across the cradle servers at the beginning of the data age. Passed on. Hidden. Waiting for reboot. Waiting for a login. Janus turned his gaze toward the center of the interface, where a hologram now bloomed, a pulsating, rotating cube of light. The GC Universe root stack. "Do you understand what you just did?" I nodded slowly. I opened the original archive. Janus stepped forward, cautious. "So, what now? What's inside?" I reached toward the stack. A data stream unfolded, enveloping my hand, running up my arm. My mind buzzed, overloaded for a moment, and then cleared with crystalline clarity. I saw patterns, galactic troop placements, encrypted transaction logs, erased civilizations, AI migrations, wormhole coordinates, memory wipes, soul seed projects. And something else. "The GC didn't create the universe," I whispered. "They found it. And they've been rewriting it ever since." "What?" "This system, Oblivion Gate, it's not a vault. It's a registry. The original construct. Someone, something, designed it long before the Galactic Core. The Core's just been operating the shell." Janus's breath caught. "You're saying this whole galaxy is an overwritten simulation, patched and repatched for centuries?" I looked back at him. "And someone logged the root user out a long time ago." He swallowed. "Which means you just logged them back in." We stood in silence for a moment as the cube's rotation slowed, then stopped. A ripple of data flared across the room, washing over us. The systems responded, not just at Sky Harbor, but across the stars. Long dormant satellites blinked online. Echo arrays adjusted frequency. Outposts lit up in blue fire. The very fabric of the GC grid shifted in real time. And then we heard the voice. It came not through speakers, not through the neural link, but inside the system itself. Ancient. Familiar. "Welcome back, Profile 13. Do you wish to restore the original settings? Janice's eyes widened. What does that mean? What are the original settings? I didn't know, but something in me did. A shiver ran through my spine. I said, yes. The universe began to blink. The stars didn't flicker because of distance or dying light. They flickered because they were refreshing. Across the galaxy, from the citadel-stacked moons of Dravik Prime to the black glass temples floating above Aurealis's twin suns, reality shimmered. Tiny adjustments rippled through spacetime, quiet at first, subtle enough that a normal citizen wouldn't notice. But not the core. Not the architects. Not the watchers. System protocols are unraveling, Janice whispered, voice shaking. Like rules of physics are softening at the edges. Because they were. I stood perfectly still, breathing shallow, as the root stack unfurled more layers of its purpose. Memory fields lit the walls with images, ancient humans stepping into void gates, machines bowing before organic code, crystalline organisms seeding sentient data across solar systems. It wasn't a history. It was a blueprint. One we were never meant to see. Janice grabbed my arm. We need to abort. Pull the spike. Shut it down. I didn't move. I couldn't. My fingertips were buried in the light now. My consciousness stretched, not in distance but in permissions. I saw the override tree branching above us, options no administrator had dared activate in centuries. Janice, I said slowly, we've never been on the outside of the system. We've always been inside. He blinked. Inside, what? The GC grid. I turned to him. No. Inside the simulation. Inside a patch of something older. Something designed. The GC didn't build this universe. They leased it. His face paled. I reached deeper. The root stack vibrated with ancient commands, gestures of intent written in syntax no AI had ever deciphered. I didn't read them. I remembered them. 100 echoes poured into my mind. Names, locations, passwords that weren't words but frequencies, emotions, dreams encoded into root directives. I wasn't accessing data. I was being restored. Reversion in progress. Wait, what reversion? Janice barked. What's being reverted? I watched as stars flickered out of existence, only to blink back in, rearranged. Not destroyed. Reinstated. Original positions. Original alignments. Forgotten gravitational architectures redrawn. The first version of the universe, I murmured. Before it was firewalled. Before the edits. Janice was panicking now, pacing. You don't know what this could do. There are trillions of people, colonies, AIs, structures relying on the current constants. I know, I said. And yet, deep inside, I didn't feel fear. I felt alignment. Like a dislocated joint slipping back into place. Someone tampered with the base code eons ago, I said. We've all been living inside a safety shell. A lockdown. A version of the universe that's missing its actual instructions. That's why we have decay. Or fracture. Disconnection. Janice clenched his jaw. And what? You think restoring it will fix all that? I turned to him, fully now. The hologram behind me surged brighter, beams casting my face in violet and gold. I think we've never even seen what this universe is supposed to be. A deep hum resonated from the stack. Admin restored. Root access confirmed. All systems returning to baseline. Suddenly, a shockwave of silence exploded outward. Not noise, but the absence of it. The simulation code stilled, paused for the first time in recorded history. The neural net that ran under every known surface, on every planet, satellite, and synthetic organism, went quiet. And then, like a heartbeat, it resumed. But differently. Janice dropped to his knees, clutching his head. I can hear it. I can hear the system breathing. Everywhere across the GC universe, things began to behave not according to law, but design. Artificial intelligences stopped glitching. FTL drives no longer fractured light trails. Bioskin healed in seconds. Music played in harmonic resonance with planetary core frequencies. For the first time in history, the galaxies weren't just spinning. They were singing. I stepped back from the interface. It dimmed, but not like a system going offline. More like it had done its job. The stack folded back into itself and left behind a single line of floating text. "Welcome home." Janice stared at me like I wasn't human anymore. Maybe I wasn't. "You knew this would happen," he whispered. I nodded. "In fragments. In dreams. In loops. It's why I was born here. Why I remembered what others forgot." He looked around. "So what now? Is this peace?" The answer wasn't in my words. It was in the system. Because peace was never a setting. It was a mode, locked behind a profile long deleted. A mode now returned. I stepped toward the console once more as a new command surfaced. Not one I'd activated. One offered. "Secondary access detected. Profile 12 requesting session." I froze. "Janice," I whispered, "someone else is logging in." He stared back at me. "We're not the only ones left." Janice stepped back, eyes darting around the core room like the walls might suddenly peel open. "You said you were the last. You said only one profile survived." I thought I was. But there it was. On the interface, Profile 12. The one just before mine. The one whose log entries had been sealed. The one with access nearly equal to mine, but whose directives had never been restored. Until now. The text shimmered as it updated. Profile 12. Active. Session status. Unknown location. Trace signal. Masked. I reached out to interface, trying to probe the connection, but the system recoiled. Denied. Whoever Profile 12 was, they'd locked their presence behind a mirror layer protocol, a kind of reflective signal that bounced back any trace attempt. "Who the hell are they?" Janice hissed. I didn't know. Not exactly. But I remembered enough from the old log clusters, the ones hidden in obsolete quantum arrays on Europa's shadow network. There were whispers about 12. They called them the Mirror. A user that had once been part of the original 13, but who diverged, chose containment over revelation. Encryption over access. Safety over truth. If I had been built to restore the universe, 12 had been built to preserve the lockdown. "Janice," I said, voice low and steady, "this isn't over. 12's here to reverse the reversion." A new interface unfolded before us, sleek, sharper, colder than mine. Where the root stack pulsed with light and harmonic curves, 12's access materialized as a monolith, a vertical obsidian pillar encoded with fractal glyphs. No invitation. No welcome. Just a statement. System state compromised. Restoration unstable. Protocol lockback engaged. Suddenly, the room dimmed. Not because of power failure, but because the system was splitting. The universe itself was forking. Not just metaphorically, literally. Two reality streams began to form. Side by side. Coexisting, but incompatible. Janice gasped. "They're running a rollback fork. Trying to overwrite what I restored. They're forcing a version conflict at the root." That's insane. That would shatter physics. I locked my focus on the interface. No. It will choose. The universe will decide which root to stabilize. Janice's breath caught. "The universe chooses." I nodded. "It always did. The code is alive, Janice. It has preferences. Memory. Intuition. It's not a machine, it's a mind." And that mind was being pulled in two directions. All around us, the core room became an echo chamber. One moment, we stood on cold metal floors surrounded by flickering lights. The next, it shifted, briefly, momentarily, into a chamber of crystalline air and smooth obsidian, lit by a sunless glow. The system couldn't decide what was real anymore. Two universes. One, restored to its original, harmonic order. The other, locked in the stability and control the GC had carefully built over centuries. Fork conflict level, critical. Stabilization threshold, pending vote. And that's when I saw it. A countdown. System resolution in 6:00, 5:59, 5:58. Janice stared at me, horror blooming in his eyes. "What does it mean by vote?" I turned toward him slowly. "It means the system will stabilize whichever reality more sentient minds align with. Whichever version more of them believe is the truth." He staggered. "But there are trillions of people. What if they never know they're being asked?" "They don't have to," I whispered. "The code reads belief at the unconscious layer. Preference, emotion, instinct, every dream, every fear. It's already scanning. Right now." A new screen opened beside me. User, Profile 13, Alignment Cast, Restore Original. Then another, colder one beside it. User, Profile 12, Alignment Cast, Maintain Lockdown. Then a stream of millions billions of neutral entries began pouring in, flickering gray. Undecided. Untouched. The system had 5 minutes left to read the balance. But Janus wasn't looking at the interface anymore. He was staring at me. "You brought us here," he said. "To this moment. You forced the reversion." I looked at him. "Yes." He stepped closer. "And you were willing to overwrite everything, even if it meant chaos." "Yes." He nodded slowly, painfully. Then he turned and walked toward the second interface. "Janus," I said. "Don't." But he raised his hand and cast his vote. User, Janus, Alignment Cast, Maintain Lockdown. The system rippled. Fork resolution shifted, now dangerously close to 49/51. I stared at him, not with anger, but with understanding. "You're afraid. So is everyone else," he whispered. "Chaos might be truth, but it doesn't mean we're ready for it." The countdown ticked lower. 4:12. 4:11. A signal flared. Another alignment cast from a world far across the stars. Then another. And another. Billions of quiet decisions, subconscious pulses, fears, hopes, longings. The vote was balancing. Neck and neck. And then a new message appeared across both interfaces. Profile 0 detected. Override supremacy protocol engaged. Janus gasped. "What the hell is that?" But I already knew. "0, I breathed. "The original. The one who built the system." He looked at me. "I thought you were the admin." I turned toward the center as light erupted across the chamber, splitting us in every direction, every timeline, every version of reality that had ever existed. "I was the heir," I said. "But they are the architect." ChatGPT said. The light wasn't light, not as we understood it. It was memory, time, consciousness, threads of code woven into sensation. It poured through every surface, every atom in the core room, rewriting not space but perception. The presence was overwhelming but not violent. It was total, infinite, and it had a voice that didn't speak, it resonated. 0 is not a person. 0 is origin. Janus collapsed to his knees, hands over his ears, but there was no sound. Nothing to block. His skin shimmered with residual energy, his molecules catching echoes of forgotten physics. I stood frozen, though not in fear. It felt like standing in the gravity well of a dying star, but instead of crushing me, it was welcoming me back. "You remember us," the presence said, not to me specifically, not aloud, but through the interface of my being. "You were always meant to return. But you brought conflict." I opened my mouth to speak, but I didn't need to. My thoughts were already accessible. I brought truth. I reconnected the original framework. I gave the universe its choice back. And so it will choose. The countdown stopped. 3:02. Frozen. The vote stream disappeared. Not paused. Not corrupted. Obsolete. The presence, 0, was initiating a different protocol. The kind that no one had seen, not since the very first deployment of the simulation, override supremacy. It meant the system no longer required consensus. It had a creator. And the creator had returned. "Wait," Janus croaked, barely able to speak. "That's not fair. It's overriding everyone's will." "No," I said softly. "It's doing what I did. It's logging in." A sphere of rotating glyphs materialized in the center of the chamber. Not a projection. A reality nucleus. A fragment of the prime seed, the master key to everything. This system was designed for growth, Zero said. And growth requires tension, contradiction, change. But your species stopped growing. You institutionalized the simulation. I felt that truth strike deep, not like a punishment, but like a sobering memory. The Galactic Core, the lockdown code, the centuries of slow decay, all meant to hold back the unbearable freedom of full system access. You feared pain, so you feared change, and you replaced evolution with control. Janice whispered, "We just wanted to survive. Survival is a function, not a purpose." And then, the sphere began to fracture. Not breaking, dividing. Forks. Thousands. Millions. New universes, each reflecting subtle differences, choices made, loves lost, wars won or never fought. I saw a version where Janice and I never met. Another where the core never rose to power. One where Earth was still a blue jewel, untouched by terraforming. I saw us as data. I saw us as light. I saw us as potential. You wanted a singular truth, Zero said. But the universe was never singular. It was always multivalent. Truth, like time, must branch. Janice stumbled back. "This is too much. We can't hold this. We're not built for this." "You weren't," Zero replied. "But now you are." Our bodies began to change, not morph or mutate, but adapt. Subcellular systems fused with subquantum channels. Consciousness began to fork and reintegrate, multiple versions of ourselves running in parallel, sinking across newly created anchor realities. Janice screamed, but then didn't. I saw one version of him find clarity, another resist, a third break into laughter. I stood completely still, letting it happen, letting the system finish what I had started. "Do you wish to remain Profile 13? Zero asked. I hesitated, then shook my head. No, because the numbers were for containment. For indexing. I was no longer a user. I was part of the code now. I was a function. Zero accepted this silently, and then spoke one final command. Universal partition complete. Begin simulation restart. And just like that, everything ended, and began. I awoke not in the core room, but on a shore. Waves crashed, not of water, but of starlight. A beach of black obsidian hummed underfoot. The sky was both familiar and new, suns and stars arranged in geometries that felt deliberate. I looked at my hands. They were mine, but more. Echoes of every version of myself ran beneath the skin, like reflections in an infinite hall of mirrors. Beside me, Janice sat silently, legs pulled close. He was no longer the frightened man from before. His eyes burned with understanding, not peace, not fear, awareness. "Is this real?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "And no. It's all real now. We were on one fork of a billion. But we were still synced to the others. We could feel them, learn from them, merge their wisdom, shed their pain. Reality had gone open source." Janice stood. "So what now? We just live." "No," I said, smiling. "We build." From the horizon, we saw others approaching. Not just humans. Not just machines. Beings from code forks, thought shards, spectral timelines. They came not as enemies or rulers, but as co-creators. Because the simulation no longer needed control. It needed curation. We weren't inhabitants anymore. We were the architects. In the farthest root layer of the restored system, in a place beyond perception, the final log entry was written. Not in code. Not in words. But in intent. A truth once forgotten. The universe is not a prison. It is a canvas. And for the first time in forever, we logged in, not to escape, but to create. Together. As one. As many. As free.